life-changing, 10 out of 10, 5 by 5, totally incredible. When you're doing a book tag or a tag video, do you ever want to change the order of the questions? Like, I think the order of this question would make more sense and be more linear if I like answered question number 9 next, but I'm on question number 6. So like, do you ever change the order? I think I'm going to start changing the order. I'm going to give credit to like the owner of the tag, but I think I'm going to start changing the order. But I'm not going to change the order in this video. Hey, I'm Mo. Today I want to do the nonfiction book tag. I'm not sure who made this tag. I will try to look it up and I will put their name in the description box, or maybe I will put it right here. No one tagged me in this, but I thought it was really interesting, especially coming on the heels of Nonfiction November, to talk about nonfiction. I have my notebook. Question number 1, how much nonfiction do you read? I read about 1 nonfiction book a month, sometimes closer to 2. For Nonfiction November, I read 4 nonfiction books, which I think is the most nonfiction books I've read in a month. I like to pepper in nonfiction. I don't read a lot of heavy nonfiction. I read a wide variety of nonfiction. It's nice to learn a new skill or gain some knowledge besides like theoretical fiction knowledge. What nonfiction videos do you make? I only made 1 nonfiction video, which was like a nonfiction for all readers video, which I really liked. This comes up later in this tag, but I think one of the issues that people have with nonfiction is that they feel they have to read these really heavy books, these really intense political, social books to fit into that category of nonfiction, or these really heavy stories, these really excruciating memoirs, these very difficult topics. And those books are all great, but you don't have to read those. So I think I would like to do videos on different nonfiction that you could read. There's so much nonfiction that is useful and helpful, so much of people's experiences. I think there is nonfiction for every reader, so I would definitely like to make more of those. I've also, of course, included nonfiction in all my wrap-ups, which I will also continue to do. Question number 3, what's your favorite subgenre of nonfiction? I think my most read subgenres of nonfiction are music, travel, and sustainability, including like gardening, plants, living simple lifestyles. So that probably is my number 1 favorite subgenre. I really like that it like teaches you something that I would like to put into practice in my daily life. Question number 4. Do you have a favorite nonfiction book? Every book that I put into my Nonfiction for Every Reader video are some of my favorite books, but one that I didn't mention in that video is Our Band Could Be Your Life. I think this book really did actually change my life, and finding punk rock changed my life in a lot of respects. Like, I kind of think of my life like pre-punk rock and post-punk rock. So this is the story of several punk bands and a bunch of other bands. This is told kind of in story form, and then it also like inserts like interviews. Each band gets kind of a longer chapter, and it's their inception to the current day, which I think this was probably written in like the early 2000s. 2001. So this was written in 2001, so it has to do with a lot of bands like in the 80s and especially 90s. But this is a book that if you're interested in music, I always suggest you picking up. If you're interested in punk rock, if you're interested in alternative rock, my all-time favorite band, Dinosaur Jr., has a chapter in here, so I like to read about that. It was great. I read it not too long before they reunited, and then so I was able to like hear their music, like I was able to read their story, and then I was able to go to their reunion tour, which was like really special, you know. And like I think nonfiction is really interesting that way, because you can't ever be part of a fairy world. You can't ever go to a fantasy place. You can't ever fly in a spaceship, but you can be transported somewhere in nonfiction and then go to that place and then see those things. There's such an immediate and interesting connection there that you can make. In some fiction, you can visit the places that the book mentions, but it's fiction, you're never going to see those characters. But in nonfiction, like, there's the potential to meet these people. Question number 5. What do you think keeps people from reading nonfiction? I think the number 1 reason that people don't read nonfiction is that they see it as this very heavy, dark genre. These very heavy topics that can be very intimidating to people, especially people who read as a form of escapism. Those are not the only nonfiction books that are available. So you can read nonfiction, and there is nonfiction for every reader. Question number 6 is why do I like nonfiction? I like nonfiction because it's educational, I think, is the main reason. I like to read nonfiction, and I like to learn something. One of the next nonfiction books that I plan on reading is called Woodswoman. My mother gave me this book, and it's just one woman's story about how she moves to the Adirondack Mountains and builds her own cabin and lives on her own terms. I might not ever have that experience, but I would love to learn how she did that and how she created that in her life and where she was in her life when she wanted that. I also love books that are about really practical things, like how-to books. I loved reading Herbs last month for Nonfiction November because it really gave me a lot of information on different herbs, and it really gave me a lot of inspiration for growing herbs in the spring. Or I can take the information in this book and see how it applies to my life and what life lessons I can take from it. And I think that's the main reason that I like nonfiction. But I also like to have an experience of reading a book that is real. So I can read a book and then really go and find that thing. I can read about gardening and then I can go garden. I can read about building a log cabin and I can go build a log cabin if I wanted to. I can read a book about ghosts of Cape May, New Jersey, and then I can visit Cape May and I can see where people saw those ghosts. Question number 7. What's a nonfiction book you read because of BookTube? I don't currently have a book that I've read solely because of BookTube, partly because I've been on it for such a short time and I kind of wait for books to come to me. It's rare that I think about a book and I go out and buy it. I don't buy new books, so it's hard to make the decision to buy a book. It's hard to find it used, maybe. A lot of the books that I've heard about on BookTube that I want to read, I've added to a want to read list, and I definitely plan on picking them up when I see them. Definitely have a long list of nonfiction books that I want to read because I've seen other reviewers talk about them. Question number 8. What's the best nonfiction book you've read lately? So I think I'm going to go with The Good Life by Scott and Helen Nearing. I read this book a couple of months ago. I've been told to read this book almost my entire life by my parents. It's a fascinating look at people living within the United States but outside of normal society, outside of the confines of consumerism and traditional constraints. I'm really excited to read the second book in this collection as well, which deals with kind of their next 10 years and their time moving their homestead from Vermont to Maine. So question number 9 is, what are some of my nonfiction reading goals? I think some of my nonfiction reading goals are to really implement some of the things that I've read this year, some of the gardening advice that I've read this year, some of the sustainability advice that I've read this year. I really want to implement that in my life. Read more on the subjects that I love. One goal that I might have for 2021 would be to read more books on businesses and starting your own business. One goal that I might have for reading nonfiction would be to read more books on our cultural and political place in the world right now. Question number 10. What is my advice for incorporating more nonfiction into your reading? My advice for incorporating more nonfiction into your reading is to not worry about what nonfiction other people are reading. I do see a trend that everyone ends up reading the same books, which is great. That's fine. But I think, going back to an earlier question, that can be very intimidating for some people. I think that you don't have to read those. So my advice is to find subjects that you enjoy and read nonfiction about them. Don't compare yourself to what other people are reading, and don't compare the books you're reading to what they're reading. And then the bonus question is to name a couple of nonfiction booktubers. One's an easy one. That's Olive from A Book Olive. She might actually have been the originator of this tag. She hosts Nonfiction November every year. She's amazing. Another nonfiction reader that I love is A Cup of Books. She does a really amazing series called The Good, the Bad, and the TBR, where she reads a bunch of different nonfiction books about the same subject. So she'll read a bunch of books about paleontology and then she'll tell you about them. She'll read a book about medical memoirs and then she'll tell you about them. Her channel's great all around, so I definitely suggest A Cup of Books. And then the last one I'm going to shout out is Live Forever or Die Trying. I think he exclusively reads nonfiction. I don't know if I've ever seen him read a nonfiction book, but his channel's really great too. He reads a lot of, like, a wide variety of subject matter, and I really like his reviews. He'll do roundups and he'll just speak really intelligently about the books that he's read. Those are 3 nonfiction booktubers that I would highly recommend you check out. I will leave their links in the description box below. If you have an interesting nonfiction history, if you have an interesting nonfiction idea, or if you have good nonfiction reading advice, please tag yourself and do this tag. As always, if you want to leave a comment, I would love it. If you would like and subscribe to this video, that would be cool. Thanks so much. Bye. These questions are in a weird order. Like, I think I would have changed the order